Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1566. The topic is nutrition and the title is Food Digestion Rate Considerations. So I've been talking with a few online clients about nutrition, one of which we were discussing the desired amount of fat content per meal as it relates to their hunger levels throughout the day. So they realized they were getting pretty hungry between meals. They asked, what to do about that. They knew that they didn't necessarily want to eat more. Right now we're eating to maximize our training adaptations and to stay lean. And they really don't have caloric room to eat more and stay lean. It would cause body fat gain. So we were talking about what the other options were. And one easy option is to swap calories within the meal from carbohydrates to fats to slow down the digestion of the food, and that can actually help make them feel fuller longer between meals. We also talked about volumizing with less nutriently dense foods and other things, but the concept of digestion rate of foods came up, and it came up with a couple other clients. I thought it'd be fun to kind of touch on that in the podcast. Now, when it comes to nutrition, what's most important, what's most impactful, we talk about in podcast 1232 all the time. I talk about that. You can find it on our website, www.brutalirongym.com. It tells you step by step what's most important. Calories are most important, protein's most important, then the distribution of calories and protein, and then specific foods. So when we're talking about digestion rate, we're talking mostly about specific foods. It is important, it is impactful, but if you have the right types of foods at the right times, but you don't have the right amount, calorie-wise, you're not going to get the results you want. If you have the right foods at the right times, but you don't have enough protein, you're not going to get what you want. So you got to take care of the big things first. So we're diving into, something that's a little more nuanced, but it's still very important and helpful. So typically with nutrition clients, when I work with people one-on-one, whether it's nutrition only or for nutrition and training, I give them a general list of quote-unquote healthy foods, and these are foods that should kind of make up the majority of your diet. And if we're looking at fat sources like avocado, butter, cheese, fatty meats, nut butter, nuts, oils, whole eggs, all those are fine. You might be surprised to hear butter on the list, but you don't want to eliminate all saturated fats whatsoever. Saturated fats do have a role in hormone health. You just don't want your diet being entirely saturated fats. Saturated fat should be about 1/3 of your total fat intake, and it depends on how nuanced you want to get with this. I work with very high-level athletes, so we get super nuanced. But then I also work with people who are just regular human beings, and they're struggling to maintain calories and protein, let alone give a crap about what type of fats are in their food. So it kind of depends on where you are in your mind and in your habits, in whether these kind of things matter for you or whether there's something you can give attention to. But if you can give attention to types of fats like saturated versus unsaturated, you don't have to avoid all saturated fats. It's roughly about 1/3 should be saturated fats. Then if we look at carbohydrates like bagels, breads, wraps, cereals, oats, oatmeal, pasta, potatoes, protein bars actually usually have more carbohydrates than they have protein, so that's actually a carb food. Rice, and then you have a bunch of vegetables. There's high carb vegetables, there's low carb vegetables, but all those are totally fine. You can eat all those as a successful diet. Protein, you have cottage cheese, egg whites, fish, seafood, Greek yogurt, meat, protein powders, tofu, and then you have secondary sources like beans and nuts and other odds and ends. Just kind of like some of the vegetarians and vegans I work with, we have to do secondary protein sources to create complete proteins while also trying to maintain normal levels of fats and carbs. So it can be challenging for sure for vegans and vegetarians to get enough protein in without overdoing their carbs and fats. So we know that that's generally a healthy list of foods. Now, when we talk about digestion rate, what I typically look for in my foods and with clients is, again, it depends on the depth of the client, like where they're at in their nutrition journey. But if we look at proteins, early in the morning, we would like protein sources that are kind of medium to faster digesting. I don't typically promote people to have super slow protein sources in the morning, because you woke up from sleeping, which is like a fasted state, and it's good to get some protein in your body to start the day. Kind of get it in the bloodstream, start, finishing off whatever repairs maybe weren't finished that night, get ahead of the damage that's about to come. So I tend to have people, lean towards like lower fat content of protein sources. So maybe they'll have like turkey bacon, maybe some like sausage or eggs, but it's not necessarily 50, 60, 70 grams of fat in the meal. There's typically going to be like a lower fat content for the meal. So it's more protein and carbohydrates balanced within the calorie content within the meal, as opposed to being a lot of fats. So fats will slow down the digestion of protein and carbs. So even if you have a fast carb and a fast protein, but you put fat in there, it'll slow those down. So typically, it depends on the person and stuff, but if you're looking at, what's a good protein source for the morning, you want something that's going to sustain you to the next meal. So if you're eating breakfast, at 8 a.m. and then you're not eating again until noon, you want something that's going to take, 4-ish hours and you're going to feel full for 4 hours. But if you're eating and then going to work out, you got to have fast protein source. So you might look at like just a powder, like a whey protein powder. You want it in there fast. And you wouldn't put any fats with that because that would just slow down the powder. So early in the morning, if you're not going to work out, really any protein source is okay. You just want to keep the meal to be mostly carbohydrate and protein and minimal fats. So that way the protein can get in your bloodstream pretty quick. Now, if you're doing a low carb diet, okay. Yeah, I would argue that it's unnecessary, but fine. You want to pick more unsaturated and kind of easier digestible fats, and that would be, for example, oils and nuts. They tend to digest faster than, say a sirloin steak. So oils and nuts will digest quicker, especially if like something called MCT oil, which is a medium chain triglyceride oil. That digests very quickly for being a fat. But you want to focus mostly on carbohydrates and proteins. If you do fats, do simple digesting fats, and that could be nuts, nut butter, and oils. Those tend to be okay. Or egg yolks are actually okay as well. You just want to avoid really fatty meats in the morning. That can really slow down the digestion of the protein and kind of limit its release into your bloodstream. If you're about to go work out, whether that's in the morning or anytime, you want super fast digesting protein. So protein powders, basically, or you can do egg whites if you want to. Other kind of easier digesting other easy digesting proteins could be like cottage cheese, for example, or a very lean meat. Some of my bodybuilders, like in the past, have eaten like tilapia, like a white fish, before workouts, and sure, that'll work well as well. So the idea is before a workout to eat a protein that digests quickly. Now, same thing when you're doing post-workout. Post-workout, you want super fast. Protein powders, isolate, try to get rid of carbs and fats. Try to really focus in just on protein. And then before bed, that's another kind of consideration of protein choice. And before bed, you want a really slow protein. So you want something like, a fatty meat would be totally fine, or any other kind of protein source, but you add fats into the meal. Like we talked about with like nuts, oils, you could even add cheeses. You want to slow down the digestion of protein before bed, so that way the protein is slowly released into your bloodstream throughout the night. So, meals during the day, you want kind of medium digestion rate of proteins. Right before bed, super slow. Right before and right after workouts, super fast. So those are kind of considerations you have when you're looking at protein choices based on, kind of where you're at throughout the day. So, that's something to think of. Now, for carbs and fats, typically I get asked, like, how many carbs should I have in a day? How many fats should I have in a day? Podcast 1021 is a nutrition podcast titled How Much Carbs and Fats Do I Need? And you want to listen to that. So you can really do it any way whatsoever. They've done 1,000,001 studies. They've proven that you can do diets, high carb, high fat, low fat, and you'll modify weight. Now, if you want to maximize body composition, that's very different. I am a bigger believer that people can have carbohydrates. You just got to use them. Make sure you are matching your calorie intake to calorie, output, calories in versus calories out. As long as you have your calories on point, which we said is the first most important thing you should be doing, then your protein is on point. Whatever calories are left, once you minus the protein calories from your total calories, from there, it can be carbs or fats, doesn't really matter. So if you like carbs, eat carbs. If you like fats, eat fats. If you eat mostly carbs and you find out you're hungry all day, add more fats into the meal. Swap some carbs for fats. If you eat mostly fats and you find out you're not hungry for your next meal, but you're supposed to eat, then swap some fats for carbs. Make it digest a little faster. So really, you can play a lot with carbohydrates and fats. That's actually enormous amounts of freedom within there to have fun and play with what kind of best matches your needs. So when you talk about daily meals, it depends. Like, I kind of choose my carbohydrate source based on how long is it till my next meal. For me, I know, like, if it's going to be 5-6 hours, a slower digesting carb for me is more helpful, which would be like sweet potatoes are pretty slow. Pasta's pretty slow for me. I don't really like oats, but it's slow. The reason why I don't like oats is I can eat like 400 calories worth of oats and feel absolutely no energy whatsoever compared to, like rice or potatoes. Like rice, I tend to like jasmine rice. It's a little bit of a faster digesting energy source for me. So I tend to, if I need to push calories and get more calories in because I want to grow, I focus more on rice. When I'm dieting and I want to limit the amount of calories I consume, I tend to reduce my carbohydrates overall, focus more on fats because I'm less hungry throughout the day. And then when I do carbohydrates, like sweet potatoes for me are very filling, and then I don't feel super hungry for a while. So that's one of my choices that I really like. But the idea is, if I eat this meal and I have 5 hours, what is going to last about 5 hours? Now, this is trial and error. So I've been doing this since I was 15 years old. So I've been doing it for 24 years. So I'm well aware for my body, what are the sources that digest fast versus slow. And for you might have to kind of experiment with that. So maybe you have a breakfast today and then you realize, holy freaking crap, I'm hungry in like 2.5 hours. I need to add fats to that meal tomorrow to try to slow that down. So it's helpful to be mindful of what you had and what you feel. What did I have for this meal? What did I feel after this meal? What did I have at the next meal? What did I feel at the next meal? And just kind of be mindful of that. If you find out you're super hungry for your next meal, maybe you need to swap some carbs for fats, get a little more fats in that previous meal, and it'll extend your satiation, like your sense of feeling full between meals. If you're not hungry enough for your next meal, you got a lower fat content. So really just kind of playing around with that is super helpful. Now, when we look at like carbohydrates, anything. I mean, if you do something high sugary like candy, yeah, that's not a great idea. But really, any carbohydrates are fine. Bagels, breads, wraps, cereals, oatmeals, oats, pasta, potato, rice, vegetables, all that stuff is totally fine. It's just saying, what matches what I like and what matches where I'm at in the day. So, for example, if I'm going to do like pre-workout, if I'm like less than 10 minutes before the workout, I want sugars. That's actually an okay time to drink sugar, sports drink, fruit juice, iced tea, whatever the heck it is. If I'm like maybe 10 to 20 minutes before the workout, it can be actually even like solid sugars. Some people do candy. Some people do like, gummy bears, things like that. They can take a little bit longer to digest than just liquid sugars. So you might want to be more at like the 20-minute mark if you're going to do that. Anywhere from like 30 to 90 minutes or so before the workout, so 30 minutes to an hour and a half, you're better with like lighter carbohydrates, more refined carbohydrates, like white bread, white bagel, pasta, white potato, like a white rice, just faster digesting versions of those. If you're further out from the workout, say 90 minutes or more, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours away from the workout, then you can have more complex things. So that can be like quinoa or brown rice or a sweet potato, more slower digesting carbohydrates. But it's a good idea to say, okay, if I want to eat this meal and then have energy in my workout, what can I eat now? And then it will actually be digested in my bloodstream, by the time of the workout. So if it's right before the workout, sugars are okay. If you're about a half hour to an hour and a half away from the workout, then white things like white bread, white bagel, white pasta, white potato, white rice. If you're further than that away from the workout, then more complex foods are probably better. So that way it's slower digesting and you'll actually have some energy at the workout. So if I have a client that eats at 12:30 and then they go work out at say 4:30, we tend to want to promote something slower digesting at lunch, slower digesting carbohydrates, even mix in some fats. And then right before the workout, I have them try to drink like a sugary drink. And then all of a sudden they have great energy, at the workout. But if they ate at 12:30, they ate something super fast, all of a sudden they're hungry at 2:30. Then by the time we get the drink in at 4:30, that just kind of replaces the hunger that was already there. Then they wipe out and they have no energy. So it's very helpful to play with, what did I have and how did I feel? How long did I not feel hungry? That kind of thing. Just playing with that. And then, as I said, with fats, generally there's not much playing with the digestion rate of fats as much as playing with the volume of fats. There are fats that digest faster. Like I said, MCT oils, generally oil tends to feel less bloat and less sluggishness after eating that, as opposed to like a solid food fat. So if I ate, like a pound of ground beef, I'm going to feel a lot different than if I tried to get the same amount of fats from just oils, oils and nuts. I'm going to feel less bloated, less heavy, less like lethargic after the oils and nuts than I would after like a pound of meat. So it really depends on kind of your schedule throughout the day. If you have long times between meals, it's good to have fats in the meals. If you have short times between meals, it's good to reduce fat intake at those meals. So it really kind of depends on what you need for your schedule. And then before bed, it's a really good idea to mix in some fats. Definitely get some fats into the meal before bed, so it slows digestion down and you get better digestion and slower digestion throughout the night. And that's just a slower release into the bloodstream. So those are some general considerations when we're thinking about food digestion rates. And when we're looking at protein, in the beginning of the day, we want kind of medium to faster sources, get the protein in their bloodstream. Pre and post workout, super fast, as fast as you can get. And then before bed, you want to have a slow digesting protein source. So that's good things to think of for protein. For carbohydrates, kind of depends. If I need the energy now because I'm about to go work out, I want simple carbohydrates, sugars. If I don't need the energy now, but I want some energy for the next couple hours, just general daily activity energy, then I can have, regular, more complex type carbohydrates like bagels, breads, pastas, rice, potatoes, that kind of stuff. When we think about fats, we want to be aware of fat intake. So if I need a meal to digest fast, I don't want any fats in it. If I want a meal to digest slower, I want fats in it. And then also we do want fats before bed. So those are just some things to think through. I hope you thought that was interesting. If you have any specific questions, please reach out. The whole point of the podcast is to answer questions. So if you need anything or want anything, just reach out and send me an email, brutaliron@gmail.com. And then we also have our nutrition coaching service online on the website. You can just go to www.brutalirongym.com, and we have where I help you for $100 a month. I tell you what to eat and how to eat it, and we go through and answer any personal questions you have around food and building that into a healthy lifestyle. So that's a pretty awesome service, very inclusive for only $100 a month, and you can learn more about that on our website at www.brutalirongym.com. Okay, well, if you like the podcast, please share it. If you share it, let people know that we answer questions for free. Thank you to those who donate to support the podcast. It does have a high hosting cost every year. I give an hour to it every day, so I appreciate the donations. You can donate on our website at www.brutalirongym.com. Option for a one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation, even $5 a month. It does help. And then if you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. I post on Instagram every day, YouTube a lot more, so find us and follow us under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.